Welcome to Before Floor, the pregame edition of Five on the Floor, brought to you by the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka Three Piece Combo, and we're coming to you live with Mateo Mayorga, Mr. Gadiel Cartagena, and Mr. Time from the Bahamas. So appreciate you gentlemen joining us. And if you guys are joining us live, make sure you subscribe to the Five Reasons Sports channel. Make sure you guys like the video as well if you're a Miami Heat fan. We appreciate it, and it's free support, so we appreciate that as well. Now, if you guys are young, if you guys are with a family and you want to make sure anything happens, right? We got hurricanes going all in Florida. If anything happens to you, you want to make sure your assets go to the right people. Hit up markbrownpa.com, like Alejandro put it up, marcbrownpa.com. Services the entire North Lauderdale area. Gives you, he's a Heat fan as well, so make sure you support him and not somebody else. I always say this, right? Don't give your money to a Lakers fan or a Knicks fan or any of those people. Give your money to Heat fans. Support the brotherhood that we all have. Give him a call, 954-866-8513. Like I said, he'll do all your financial planning. He'll take care of you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably need to hit him up. Like I said, markbrownpa.com. Now, when it comes to your daily fantasy, we're going to give you some tips later, but you got to go to prizepicks.com to take advantage of our picks for you, right? Go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, spell that out, FIVE, and will you double your deposit up to $100. So that's literally $100 of free money you're getting to use to get this daily fantasy, right? And it's daily fantasy. So if you drafted somebody who got hurt early in the season, come play some daily fantasy. You just pick if they go over or under on points, rebounds, assists, and at the end, pretty easy to go. Like I said, use PrizePicks, use promo code 5, and double your deposit up to $100. Gentlemen, Max Strus hit a really, really clutch shot, and then so did Josh Hart. So we're 4-7. Danny Hendricks is saying tank season. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. But it's 4-7 is probably not the expectation we had coming into the season. We didn't lose all that much outside of maybe PJ Tucker, but we're also having some injury problems. We were counting on Oladipo to, I feel, give us a little bit more coming into this year. Yurtseven, we were expecting to have fill some of that PJ role with the rebounding at least. Not having any of those guys. Team isn't meshing, right? Not doing well offensively or defensively on any particular night. So, Gad, I'll talk to you on this one. We'll start with you on this one. We're going into this Charlotte Hornets game. Is tonight a must-win?
It's crazy we're at that point, right? Like, it's just wild to say and ask that question 11 games into the season. I don't want to say it's a must-win, but like the fan base, the players, and probably the organization as a whole be damn frustrated if they do lose this game. Because this is, like, you could not ask for a better 2 games in a row to get back on track. The Hornets are not good, and they're sitting a lot of their guys because they played last night. So they're catching the Hornets on the tail end of a back-to-back and on the third game in 4 nights. Like, they need to win this game, but it's not a must-win. If they do lose this game, though, like, disappointment will be sky high, and Twitter will be hilarious.
Andrew Lewis saying, don't let go of the rope. I love that. Love that. Mateo, I'll go to you on this one. Charlotte obviously struggling there without their main star in LaMelo Ball. Rozier has been playing really well, filling that gap for them, at least in the scoring department. And they have a lot of young players, but it seems like without LaMelo, they're not putting it together as well offensively without him. 27th ranked when it comes to points per game, and not doing well defensively, bottom half of the league defensively. What do you see from Charlotte this early in the season? Maybe some things that you worry about and some things that we can expose.
Well, Jonathan, what I've seen from them is that they're only effective attacking in 2 spots, the restricted area and in the corners. Now, they do find the bottom of the barrel a little easier away than at home. They make 45% of their attempts outside of their building as opposed to 41% in Charlotte. Now, this team does not shoot well from the outside, and teams very often go to the 2-3 zone against them. You saw it last night. The Portland Trailblazers used that, and it baited the Charlotte Hornets into taking 40 triples, and they only made a quarter, 10 of those. They shot themselves out of the game, and on the other end where they run into trouble is they have the 3rd weakest paint coverage in the league, not counting the restricted areas, the spots above it, and that's really strange considering how often they go to a 2-3 zone that puts 3 defenders in the back line covering the rim. But regardless of that, Jonathan, this team periodically gives up the baseline on cuts to the basket starting from the corner. And aside from that, they're also very late to adjust to shooters standing in the corner on drive and kick plays. So if Miami could beat them in those areas, I think they're gonna come away with a win. Excuse me. Thank
No,
you.
you're good. And I agree with you. I think beating them, not in an isolation matter, but with how we've been successful so far this season, the Heat team has looked great on offense when the ball is moving and we're playing unselfishly, almost like early 2020 when you had, a couple of guys in there. But now let's go to what the formula is going to be for tonight, Timmy, right? In the last game, obviously it was a loss, but it was really close, right? We had 5 players with 15 points or more, right?
And you
15 or
basically
16.
almost had the entire team with double digits. I think was it Gabe or Duncan was like 1 point away from double digits, so it was a very
It was
well
not Gabe.
It was Duncan.
Duncan, sorry. It was one of the bench guys. It's pretty spread out. And I shout out to Mateo, like that team sucks at shooting, and they also they have a bad field goal percentage. You have Oubre who doesn't think a shot is bad. You have Rosier who doesn't think a shot is bad, and Washington who is so very happy that Miles Bridges is a dummy and a very bad person. That PJ is now like hooping. But he's like, I have my fantasy team, you saw already the fantasy. He's like, he shoots like 8 from 50 sometimes. It's really, really bad. This team is very inefficient. They will force bad shots. And just a positive for Hornets, I always like DSJ. I hated he lost his confidence 2 or 3 years back, but this is the one silver lining for him as a player. With LaMelo injury is DSJ, and my only fear is that DSJ breaking down the defense, which makes the Heat scatter. If we could just play a normal solid defense, we should have no problem bait them into bad shots and getting out and running. But I'm just afraid that I said this one of the times. If you have Caleb defending the point guard, that means you're gonna have Kyle either on Oubre or Scary Terry or PJ. But this team is I'm surprised it's so high with being the third worst. I thought they were the worst team in the paint because Plumlee is not a rim. No, Plumlee is more of a triple handoff guy. He likes to handle the ball. They really have no paint points. They have Mark Williams, Nick Richards, who just set screens, rebound. The Heat, especially Jimmy and Baum, should live in the paint tonight. And when they get there, they can create those easy threes you've been seeing, like the Strus, the Duncan. I think Hero is going to be back, even though shout out to Ethan. Just said that both Caleb and Hero are questionable. I do think our shooters are going to eat tonight, but we just have to stop. It always come back to the point of attack. We can't let TSJ and he has a quick ledge versus Lowry. We can't let them get in the paint and break down our defense.
To be honest with you, DSJ a couple of years ago was one of those guys that I wanted to pair up next to Bam because I felt like they would have been a really good duo because when he was really hitting, just the ability to finish at the rim, the ability to hit the 3-point shot, and I think him and Bam already would have had some chemistry there. So I think it's nice to see him be a little more successful as well. Like noted, Caleb Martin and Tyler Hero both questionable. People are saying we should sit them both. They were good tonight. Not quite sure. We've had some bad losses against some bad teams, so I don't know if we're ever good, to be honest. Right now, like they got to prove me wrong to not feel that way, right? So, Gad, let's go to tonight, right? Do you think Miami hits it with more of a 3-point attack and we kind of drive and kick out to shooters? Or do you see this being a game that Jimmy Butler is going to have to take over at the end, even though they're down a couple of guys?
Ooh, I definitely hope not to the Jimmy Butler question. I think ball movement should definitely work against the Hornets. I know Steve Clifford, one thing that you can hang your hat on for a Steve Clifford coach team is that they're going to rebound the ball and they're going to try to defend, but they genuinely just don't have the personnel, in my opinion. Jalen McDaniel is probably like one of their bright spots on that end, and that isn't saying too much. So I think the Heat should be comfortable kind of getting to whatever they want. Like if they struggle tonight against Charlotte, I think that is kind of like an indicator of worse things to come, but I don't think they will struggle much. Like this kind of needs to be that type of game for the Heat, and I'm pretty confident that they're going to have a pretty good offensive showing today.
Beautiful. So let's get to some of our prize picks rapid fire for the day. Mateo, I'm going to kick it off with you, brother. We have Jimmy Butler sitting at 23 points right now. Are you taking the over on that? Or are you taking the under on that?
I'm taking the over on that. What did he have last game? Like 16? That's far below his standards, and he only got to the line like 6 times. I'm expecting a double digits in that stat category of free throw shooting today, and I think he'll have closer to 25 because the Charlotte Hornets, they utilize a 2-3 zone often as well, but it's very weak. Guys like Jimmy should have no problem forcing action into the middle and forcing a whole bunch of attention, even leaving the rest of the perimeter further exposed. So I'm going to go with Jimmy having a big night tonight, John.
I don't only love your pick. I love that description of why you did that. Like, that was beautiful. That was amazing. Timmy, I'll get to you on this, man. We have Bam Adebayo, 18.5 points. You going over or under on that?
I always remember when Plumlee got picked over Bam for the Olympic team. There's three players, well, three persons that Bam always goes at because of that. Miles Turner, Mason Plumlee, and Popovich. For the rest of his career, he always puts up career numbers against those guys. So I expect Bam to remind Plumlee while Bam is probably the best available center for the USA basketball team.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry, 8 assists last game. He's at 6.5 for Prize Picks. You going over or under on that?
6.5 again. I think last game I went over, right? I think I was saying that it was over. I'll go over again tonight. I think the ball is going to be moving again. I don't know if Hero's going to play. If he doesn't play, that probably helps the ball movement's sake. But even if he does, this would probably be like a get-right game for almost everyone. I think they really shoot a good percentage from three and have the ball moving tonight.
Now, I want to look at Charlotte's side a little bit and see what they have going on. They have Terry Rozier sitting at 21.5 points. Would you guys, collectively, any of you guys, would you guys go over on that or under?
Beep. I would go over. I would go over. Especially if Caleb's questionable. If Caleb is out, you could probably pencil Terry in for 30.
So it seems like Caleb might be playing, but Tyler won't.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna go with the under. This is a team that could get baited a lot into playing from the outside, and if he gets switched on to someone like Bam, I don't think he's gonna get past him. But honestly, there's only one of Bam, and if Caleb's out, that'll spell doom for the rest of the Heat's defense aside from Jimmy. So for now, I'm gonna go with the under.
Yeah, interesting. So let's get into the predictions, guys. Mateo, I'll let you just start it off right away, man.
Okay.
What do you think we're going to need to do for a win tonight, and who do you think gets the win?
Well, Jonathan, my biggest concerns are the fourth quarter defense for Miami. They got to, dig a little deeper because the last game against Portland, the Trailblazers shot 76% in field goal percentage against the Miami Heat and on 17 attempts. That's too high a volume, too high a percentage. That'll beat anybody in a close game. Miami needs to certainly do a better job of staying in front of their man and closing out to marksmen on the perimeter. But what's also a thing for me is, and we touched on it earlier, I need to see them get to the line more. 15 free throw attempts is far below their standard, and getting there often, apart from that, doesn't just put the opponent in free throw trouble. It gives your defense a break, and when you get there more often than the opponent, you start to control the pace of the game. So those would be my keys, and I'm calling a Heat win because this is a team that's only won 3 times and lost 9. Jesus.
No, beautiful. I love it, man.
Thank you.
Timmy, what you got for me, man?
I was so sure we would beat Portland. I would have been right if Kyle Lowry had close to this man. But I won't lie. I am getting a bit worried about this team. We didn't even discuss that Europe may be out for the whole season. I'm really getting worried for this team. And I think this is not a must win. Like, not burn the boats yet. But if your division mate who's without LaMelo, Twin Martin, and Gordon Hayward, you can't beat this team, you have some serious issues you need to sort out. I think Chibi comes out and says, enough is enough. Let's get this win.
What do you think, Ed?
I think Mateo and Timmy did a perfect job. I'm with both of them. I think the Heat win. If they can't get their offense going tonight, I think that'll say a lot about the direction of or what the outcome of this season might be for this team, because you should be able to get kind of whatever you want with the personnel that they're going to have out there. So we'll see, but I'm confident the Heat win.
This is almost like the first game against the Kings. I'm feeling like it's like, all right, we can go there and win, and then something happens. But same thing tonight, right? Like you guys said, there's a lot of things wrong with this team as far as injuries. And before I get on with that, thank you, Darius Jordan, for the $2 dono. He said, Gad, what will it take? Gad.
For the Heat to win?
One thing. What will it take?
Move the ball. I think, honestly, ball movement can just win the game. Like, it should be that simple for this offense tonight. Obviously, make shots, but that's the case on any basketball game ever.
Move the ball, and I'll throw a little bit extra. If we score more than them, we probably get the win.
That's a bar.
So, I'm gonna take Miami as well tonight. I don't think Jimmy's gonna let us lose this game. I feel like this is one of those games where if we go 4-8, we're gonna have twice as many losses as a win, and I don't think the pride of this team is gonna allow themselves to do that. Like, they pride themselves on not being a garbage team. So I think we do get the win tonight. I don't think it'll be an easy win. I think there'll be spots where we let Charlotte kind of creep back up, kind of just underestimating them. But I do think Miami gets it done and closes us out. So as always, thank you guys, Mateo, Gad, and Timmy for joining us as well. Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys call Mark Brown 954-866-8513 or give him a call at markbrownpa.com. That's marcbrownpa.com. Go to prizepicks.com. We gave you guys the picks. Go ahead and fill them out. Use the promo code 5. That'll give you $100 extra if you deposit $100. And also, Alejandro is going to continue with some of the interviews from some of the players. So Alejandro, take it from here. Let's go Heat.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you guys for being here in the pregame show. And thank you to all of you that are just getting here as well. We're going to continue with our show until the beginning of the game, which should be around 7:30. So we have 45 minutes to be here together as we get ready to watch a game. Let's start our second part of the pregame show with some of the videos that we had after they lost in that last second shot coming from Josh Bart against the Portland Trail Blazers after Max Strus had just tied that game. So let's start with Max Strus. Let's hear what he said about that particular game and what happened at the end of the game.
Max, can you take us sort of through those last 2 seconds, the elation of the arena erupting when you hit the three? Then Coach said it was like time stopped. Kyle said it felt like a 4-second break before anyone knew if Portland was going to call a timeout or not. So can you take us through from the moment you hit your shot to how it played out at the end, sort of what was going on in your mind, what did you see, and what did it feel like out there?
Yeah, I mean, I hit the shot, and then I saw Chauncey on the floor, so I thought they were calling a timeout too. But yeah, I had the same thing. It all just kind of just stopped. And it felt like the longest 6 seconds possible, but he had a tough shot. Sucks, but I guess we got to live with it now.
The defense has been pretty good in fourth quarters and down the stretch this season. How frustrating was it in that final quarter? I mean, I think they hit 13 of 17 shots where guys just couldn't get a stop.
Yeah. We got to be better. There's really no excuse for that. We got to figure out a way to get stops, and we got to come together more and be better as a unit.
How did that small lineup they used with Grant and Justice in the front court, how did that sort of change the game the last 6 minutes or so?
I don't know if it really changed much. We switched 1 through 5. We had a small lineup in 2 with Gabe most of the time. But, I mean, I myself didn't get many stops. Was playing in foul trouble all night. But we just got to take the one-on-one defensive more personal and try to get stops individually. And we just didn't do that tonight.
All right, that was Max Strus talking about that 7th loss for the Miami Heat in the first 11 games of this season. Let's continue with our pregame coverage here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel, and thank you to all of you that are still here with us tonight. Let's hear what Bam Adebayo said about that game, what happened, what went on, and why the Miami Heat played that last play like they did.
Bam, what was your view of that final play? Was there a feeling like they would call timeout? Did it kind of catch you guys by surprise that they were so quick on the inbounds?
No. I mean, I looked at their coach, and he was kind of like, go with it. I mean, he hit a hell of a shot. I can't really give you a distinct answer on that. I mean, he just made a great play.
When you look at that play, all season long, there's been a struggle in transition. Was that just another of those moments, or is it a matter of when Damian Lillard has the ball, you come up and meet him, and those things can happen?
Yeah, I mean, anybody but in that scenario. You see Damian Lillard dribbling up, you want the ball out of his hands. Josh Hart made a great shot.
Ben, with the offense kind of stalling out a little bit in the fourth quarter, what was that small Blazers lineup with Grant and Justice at the 4-5? What was that doing to your guys' offense?
I mean, for us, we was trying to get a certain matchup. I feel like that was the thing that kept us stagnant. We was trying to get a certain matchup. But, we in these games, we learn lessons on, for me, it's like we got to get in our offense faster in the fourth. We got to be cohesive, we got to be connected, and we got to be on the same page.
What was it like to see? When Spo was up here, he said basically Max's shot went in, and it seemed like everything stopped. You didn't know if Chauncey was going to call a timeout. And it like literally like stop motion. What was it like in those seconds between the reaction of the joy of Max's shot, and then it seemed like everything, like time sort of stood still for a second?
When anybody makes a 2 pump fake fader, to go up 3. It's one of those things where you do got to sit there and be like, that's a tough shot. But it's also that thing where we got to get back, we got to load, and I feel like we should have had that one.
Bam, you've always been a glass half full kind of guy, but obviously this is not where you guys wanted to be after 11 games. How do you kind of keep perspective of the bigger picture at this point?
Bigger picture, we just have to take it game by game. We can't look in the future. Next game up, take it day by day. I feel like that's, we keep that mindset, we'll end up on a 4-game winning streak, 5-game winning streak. So, we can't look too much into the future. We got to take it game by game. Black Lives Matter, people. I'm surprised you ain't had nothing to say.
All right, that was Bam Adebayo talking about the 7th loss of the Miami Heat in the first 11 games of this season. Let's continue with our pregame coverage here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. The next one is going to be Kyle Lowry, and then we'll have Eric Spoelstra before we go and listen to an episode of 5 on the Floor here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Here we go.
Kyle, Coach said it was almost as if everything stopped for a millisecond after Max hits his shot, wondering if Chauncey was going to call a timeout. And then they just sort of went. Can you sort of take us through that sequence, and if it was a matter of you just stop Damian, and if something else happens, you live with it, or what happened on that transition?
It wasn't a millisecond. I think guys stopped for like 4 seconds. It was a while, and I guess he just Chauncey wanted to go, and Justice set a good screen, and Dame had a full head of steam, and if you watch our games and our defense, it's kind of like we shrink the floor, and Dame made a great pass, and Josh hit a great shot in a 3, and we lose the game, unfortunately.
Kyle, on the other end of the court, offensively, it seemed like things were flowing for you guys so well in the first half. What did you see as the biggest issues on that end in the second half and in the fourth quarter?
We missed some open looks in third quarter. We missed a lot of open looks. We had some great looks, honestly. We had some really good shots that we didn't fall in the third quarter. Fourth quarter, they went small, switched everything, but, JB got to the paint, got his shots off and got us to a spot. But I think in the fourth quarter, it was all defense. We gave up 37 points. Our offense isn't going to be well if you're giving up 37 points.
Kyle, with these last 3 games going down to the wire, with your record not being where it's at, do the last-minute losses or last-second losses, does that add to maybe, the burden where you guys are at right now?
It's a loss, honestly. Realistically, a loss is a loss. It stings a little bit more because you're so close. Honestly, you want to win these games. But, we're 11 games into a 82-game season, so we just got to kind of chip away at it and honestly take it game by game, one by one, and just kind of get to a point of, get to 500 first, and then you kind of just build from there. But we can't even think about 500. We just got to think about getting the next game. Thank you, guys.
All right, short and sweet from the Kyle Lowry. And again, the Miami Heat lost 110-107, and they're 4-7 in this start of the 2022-2023 season. They're going to play the Charlotte Hornets for a couple of times this week, trying to get back into a positive atmosphere in this season. All right, let's hear from Eric Spoelstra now and what he said after that game, and then we'll listen to an episode of 5 on the Floor talking about the offensive struggles for the Miami Heat, especially shooting the ball from the perimeter. So let's continue with Eric Spoelstra.
What was your thoughts on the biggest reason for being up 15 and the way they were able to come back?
I think it was a combination of things, but for the most part, where we've been very good this season in the short season has been defending and really holding down that side of the court in the fourth quarter, and we just were not able to do that tonight. And you have to credit them. They were Lillard and Simons were terrific in creating those triggers. And creating help situations where we had to rotate, and they just made a ton of timely plays in that fourth quarter. It felt like we just could not get a stop, and that's very much unlike us in the fourth quarter, where we haven't been able to string together 3 or 4 stops in a row. That put a little bit more pressure on our offense. We did miss some decent ones. I think there was about a minute and a half, 2-minute segment, 5 minutes to, around 3 minutes where we're probably a little bit slow initiating into our offense. And that kind of played to their advantage. But then I thought we gathered ourselves, and I thought our execution down the final 2 minutes was much, much better, make or miss. And then, they just made some big shots too. It all looks and feels different when the ball goes in as well, and it just didn't seem like they missed any of those shots, whether it was open or whether we were there and somewhat contesting. They were able to knock down some big ones.
On that final play, Portland had 1 timeout. Was there a feeling like they were going to call a timeout?
It was like everything stopped. I was looking at Chauncey. I was looking at Justice. He had the ball out, and everybody just stopped. I don't think the officials knew what was going on. And then they got into Lillard. That play reminded me of the baseline out of bounds play that happened about 4 minutes before that. It felt like it was 15 seconds long, where Simons hit the catch and go floater. This one felt like it was 15 seconds. Lillard going, full court, got the switch, and then made a heady play. I mean, I don't think a lot of players make that play, particularly Lillard. You want to go for that yourself. Just shows you, the class and IQ and trust and unselfishness and just about winning. He kicked it to an open guy. You'd probably see that across the NBA. 9 times out of 10, the guy who's dribbling up is going to launch that. And I thought we probably would have had 2 guys contesting that, Duncan and Jimmy. But he made just the right play. If somebody's open, for a count, he hit it. And Hart made a big one.
We're talking about transition defense for the past few weeks. Is that last situation I know it was off a make, but was it kind of reflective of some of the issues you've seen in transition, defending the open floor there?
Yeah, partly so. That's a little bit different, but we've had enough of those where we have bodies back in front and still get scored on, and we have to do a better job with that. I think this was a little bit different. It wasn't necessarily a scramble situation, but he just covered a lot of ground very quickly. And then the way it had gone in the fourth quarter, I understand, how it drew a couple guys, how it drew Kyle, because, he might have been able to turn the corner and get one more step into a floater. And I think that's what I thought he was going to go to. And then also you're thinking he was going to drop his shoulder and try to draw a foul. But he just made a really heady play. He just trusted his teammate and kicked it to an open 3. Okay, thank you.
All right, that was Eric Spoelstra talking about that particular game. Fernando Lopez says, I'm sorry, Alejandro, and trying to keep it positive. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder, but right now the Heat have a good opportunity to get a little back to what they were before that. Remember, they not this year, but last year, they really had a really great regular season. Mac Brown says 77 out of the season, out for the season. Who? Let me see. Are we talking about year 7? Let me see what's going on here. Omer year 7, just to make sure. I'm live here, so I don't know if something came up. It could require surgery, according to a report from Ira Winderman. We'll see what happened there, or what happens then with Omer year 7. For now, let's continue with our pregame show. Remember, tonight, the Miami Heat facing the Charlotte Hornets. They're going to play a couple of times in a row here in Miami, so let's get ready for those couple of games. The next clip here coming up, it's going to be an episode of 5 on the Floor, the one we posted today here on the YouTube channel, and it's talking about the issues the Miami Heat is having shooting the ball. Here we go.
It's episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're now on Red Circle instead of Podbean, but still on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe there for all of our other content, as well as 5reasonsports.com. You don't need to subscribe to that one. There is no paywall. Just check it out for all the latest written content. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Our friend Nelson, big Miami Heat fan, big fan of the podcast. Reach out to him if you need C-arm equipment. Okay, he's at Mobile C-arm and Staffing Services. They rent C-arm equipment on a short and long-term basis to hospitals, surgery centers, chiropractic offices, and pain management offices. They also got cadaver lab courses where the medical device companies set up a lab to showcase their products to surgeons who may not have used them before. So again, they service office-based procedures, pain management offices, chiropractic offices, and cadaver courses. And again, they rent the CM equipment to an office. They also send out an X-ray technologist to run the machine. So they can go through all of this with you. Just go to the website. It's simple. That's the letter C-armandstaffing.com. That's C-armandstaffing.com. Fill out the form. Nelson or someone on his team will get back to you. You can also reach out to him directly at 561-891-9620. That's 561-891-9620. Again, it's C-armandstaffing.com. And now, tonight's episode.
Yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I've got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Make sure you check out the episode I did with Greg yesterday, where we go through what would be the trigger to change the course of this season, which feels a little stale right now. We got a lot of feedback from that episode, so you might want to check that one out. We went a little longer than usual as well, which we do sometimes on those narrative episodes. We're going to keep this one tight and bright. We got Brady here. We got one simple question, okay? This is not complicated. Why the hell can't the Heat shoot anymore? Because last season, they shot the hell out of the ball. Okay, I'm sorry for the language here, but they did. They were a really good shooting team. That's what carried them offensively. They had good spacing. They had plenty of shooters on the floor. They took that into the playoffs. That carried them when they didn't have Bam for part of the season, when they didn't have Jimmy for a lot of games, when they didn't have Kyle for a lot of games. They still shot the ball well. Like, guys shot above their career means for the most part. They maintained it. They made shots in big spots. Then the playoffs started and everybody tanked from the outside. Like, nobody shot the ball well anymore. And that, unfortunately, has carried over. In fact, it's worse. Like, I'm watching the game against Portland, which we were all at. And Brady and I were at, along with Alex. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, boy, that's an open look, miss. That's an open look, miss. Like, this isn't like, this is simple stuff. Like, you get an open look in the NBA. You're a competent shooter. You make a good percentage of those. They're not. Brady, why?
I have a good way to characterize this, because as I just clicked on some of the numbers, I just saw that Dwayne Dedmon is shooting the best percentage from 3 on the team. And again, obviously a much different volume, But that's a problem. Like, that's a very big problem right now. If I'm looking at it, that he's shooting 40% on 1.1 threes a game. And obviously, they're just not shooting it well. Like you're saying, like, I don't even think the process has been that off. Like, yeah, I think the offense as a whole has had certain problems that they need to touch up. But in terms of generating decent looks, I don't think that's been a problem. It's just been knocking them down specifically. In terms of the numbers, I was looking at something earlier that you just hit on it. They were very, very good last year in three-point shooting. They led the league in three-point percentage. They led the league in just spot-up shooting, points per possession of spot-up shooting in general, which they are now 20th in shooting in three-point percentage and 19th in the spot-up points per possession. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that is last season they were 5th in paint touches, which means when you have gravity inside the lane, guys can help off. They begin to help off the outside shooters. You're kicking and they're hitting. They were 5th. They are now 25th. Like, that is a very big drop off. When you're talking about the only difference is losing PJ Tucker, who was not a paint touch guy. I'd say I will give him the credit to say he was part of that spot up shooting, because there was big portions of the season where he was shooting the ball really well in terms of spot up shooting and in that corner. But he's not the one that's shifting it this much. Like, PJ Tucker is not making the difference from going from 5th to 25th and 1st to 20th. Like, that's not what's happening here. So, it's just a weird scenario we're in, because then you start looking at some of the numbers. Like, you have Tyler shooting 38% from three, and obviously on high volume, you'd probably expect it to be around there. You go down to a guy like Max Strus shooting 38%, and obviously he's shooting on a crazy amount of attempts. And I thought obviously we all agree that he's played really well, especially shooting wise, because he's hit big shots. And then you get down to Kyle, who's kind of getting his number back up there at 35. I thought Gabe Vincent, being in more of an off-ball role, I thought we'd all expect him to shoot a little better. He's at 30%, and I feel like he's missed just a lot of good looks in general. Duncan has had a lot of great looks. Like, he's at 34% shooting, and we talked about the other night. Like, the shots he's getting is not what he's used to in previous years, where it's like two guys at his face flying off a handoff. It's kind of like settling in the corner, helping out to Jimmy on a drive, and it's a kind of a missing look. Like, that's kind of what's happening there. And then the other element, and I know we're going to get into this soon in the Caleb Martin pod, but he's shooting 30% from three. And when you look at historically in the Heat's kind of starting four position next to Bam, they need a high percentage there. Like, they really do. They need a spacer that is legitimately a spacer that's going to knock down that shot anytime you help down. And we saw even going to the iffy types in Jay Crowder, we saw what happened to their offense in certain portions of the bubble when he was shooting that. What happened in the regular season this past year when PJ Tucker was that. Like, there's always that, or Kelly Olynyk when he was the 5, or Myers Leonard, he was the 5 and they were shooting that. It feels like all these little elements just add into the fact that there's just a drop off here. And it doesn't help that they don't really have a go-to in terms of their team. Like, it's not that they're dominating defensively and we're seeing slippage offensively. It's just a lot happening at once, and it's just hard to focus, I guess, on one thing.
Well, I know we all follow Simon Sterling on Twitter. He tends to come up with some pretty good numbers here. And actually, the numbers you're giving me on the overall percentages are a lot higher than the percentages that he has here for wide open threes this season, which tells you something that these guys, if we're drawing from the same pool, which we should be from a numbers standpoint, it means that all of these guys are shooting better with a hand in their face than they're shooting when they're wide open, because he goes through the numbers on this. Max Strus last year, 48.6% on wide open threes. I don't know what we characterize as a wide open three. Is he drawing that from stats.nba.com perhaps?
I want to say it's like 4 to 6 feet without a defender. I could be wrong, but it's around that range.
Okay, so Strus has gone from 48.6% last year to 27.8% this year, which is much lower than his overall number, as you mentioned, of 38%. Caleb Martin has gone from 42.9% last year to 27.3% this year, which is lower than his overall percentage that you mentioned of 30%. And Gabe Vincent has gone from 35.7% on quote unquote wide open threes last year to 22.7% this year, which is also lower than his overall number of 30. So again, if we're drawing from the same stat source, which we probably should be, right? I mean, maybe it's a game off. Then that means that all three of these guys, they're former two-ways, right? That have all been, we would agree, plus contributors for them this year. I don't think any of them is really disappointed, whether it's Strus, Martin, or Vincent. We haven't pointed to them as being the big issues. All of them are shooting, let's just be honest, like crap when nobody is on them, right? Like, but they're shooting better when they're guarded.
Way to deliver the good news. I mean, this is just getting uglier and uglier.
Well, but here's the thing, Greg, and I'll go pivot to you on this. It's not necessarily bad news, because the way you could look at this is there's no way that they can continue to shoot this poorly unguarded, right? Right?
I mean, that's an optimistic way of looking at it. That's probably where the way I'll lean.
But if you're expecting some number to, I hate the term regress to the mean. Everybody says that. Regress to the mean means come down. Progress to the mean. If you're expecting anything to progress to the mean, it would be wide open threes. Like, that's the one thing. Like, that is what you're seeking. But I will tell you this, okay? I remember when Mike Bibby, and nobody wants to remember this, obviously, because Mike Bibby was an abject disaster with the Heat, may have cost him the 2011 NBA Finals even more than LeBron did. I will hold to that take that if Spo had simply played Chalmers in the finals as a starter before Game 6, I think they'd win that series regardless of what LeBron was doing. I think with Mario starting with Dwayne, they would have been okay the way Dwayne was playing. But I remember when Mike Bibby came and he was complaining that he was getting too many wide open shots, that he wasn't accustomed to getting this many wide open shots, but that playing with LeBron and Dwayne was giving him too many looks. And that was his excuse for shooting. And this is not a joke. 22% from three with the Heat in the postseason. Okay. One of the worst postseason performances of all time for the Heat. Jermaine O'Neal's is right there. And there are some Mashburn ones we can look at and some Eddie Jones ones, but Mike Bibby's is right up there. Okay. Greg, that would be the one thing encouraging from this. Like, it can't stay this bad, right? Like, Duncan Robinson, with nobody in his face, should not be shooting, in the 20s. It's crazy.
I think part of this too could be that when you get an Eastern Conference Finals run and the kind of the airtime when no other teams are playing, that you end up becoming more of a focused group in terms of that they were heavily watched and scouted. And so there is an element of that. They're not as unknown as they were last year. You're right that there's no way that they can continue to shoot this bad. I mean, as you cite some numbers that you found on Twitter, I also want to shout out John Jablanca because he brought up the way the Heat's offense just disappears when they lose. This is crazy. So their offensive rating in wins is 121.5. In losses, it's 106. League average is 112. So it's literally like just cratering. And a lot of it has to do with shooting. And I guess you're right. Like, it's tough to even draw the parallel with Bibby because like Jimmy and Bam are like, they're not Bron and Dwayne Wade. You know what I mean? So it's just hard to even make a comparable parallel to this. I just would hope that eventually they start shooting well enough because like this is the whole thing about building around Jimmy and Bam. The shooters have to be making shots like that. Otherwise, this whole thing gets fractured and paralyzed. So that's like we start pre-show before we even hit record. I was like, I don't know that I have an answer for this question before we started the episode. And I don't know that we're going to get any closer by the end of it. But you're right. They have nowhere to go but up.
I mean, you would think. I mean, you gave us this stat today. The Heat ranked number 20th or worse in offensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage, 2-point percentage, 3-point percentage, and offensive rebound rate.
Yeah,
like they're bad. Like there's nowhere they've been bad. Like we're through 11 games. They're 4-7. We talk about some of the problems with the defense, the perimeter defense in general. Where would this team be from a scoring perspective if they didn't make every single free throw? That's the other thing. These guys who can't make a shot are first in the league in free throw percentage. I mean, could you imagine if they were 15th in the league in free throw percentage? Their offensive rating would be 92. And look, I don't have the answer to this either. This is an exercise mostly to draw attention to it. I don't know what it is about missing open shots. I don't know if that's psychological. I don't know what that is. Like you have too long to think about it. I mean, we see all the time, like Max Strus comes in and he shoots. Like he's going to take a shot. He doesn't care if a hand's in his face or not in his face. He doesn't seem afraid of anything. Caleb doesn't seem afraid of anything. Gabe Vincent never seems afraid of anything. These are not beta players. We've talked about this. These are alpha role players who've had this issue. Duncan, we've had a different kind of conversation about at times. But these three guys in particular, it should not be cratering like this. we're not even having the Bam 3-point conversation anymore. And I knew we wouldn't. Like, that was one of those off-season things. And I knew we'd be 10 games into the season. Bam's not taking threes. He's not going to take threes. Okay. Jimmy is going to take threes when he feels like it, when he wants to prove a point, or when he's lazy. I feel like,
and he's hitting them okay. He's
hitting them fine, but I feel like Jimmy takes them because it's the nights he does not want to draw the contact. He starts with this stuff, and sometimes they go and sometimes they don't. Now, Tyler is not on that list, so I don't know what his open threes are, but if he's shooting 38% overall from three when he shot 40% last year, there's not a significant drop off there. So really, it's these other guys, and it's also that Duncan's playing fewer minutes than he played before, so there's one fewer shooter on the floor. But when we come back, what I want to get into is how does Spo build around this if it's not working like that? Like, because we talk about having to have two shooters on the floor at all times for space, but if Jimmy and Bam are creating stuff, or even Kyle's creating stuff, or even Tyler's creating stuff, and these guys are just clanking all the time, this is part of, then maybe it's not psychological why they're clanking, but it becomes psychological after that, because as even Jimmy has discussed, when they don't make shots, they don't get back, they don't defend, because there's a frustration that sets in. So we'll talk about that in a second. Before we do, I want to tell you about our 2 product codes here. Well, one is our fantasy code. You know that one, Prize Picks. Use the code 5. A lot of signups over the weekend, so we appreciate that. Use that code FIVE. First thing, you get your initial deposit matched up to $100. It's free money, no rollovers. You can play right away, but also helps us as a network too. Make sure if you're playing Prize Picks, use the code 5, FIVE. Get your initial deposit match. You can download it from the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, or prizepicks.com. Also, our product code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. Use that for 20% off at manscaped.com for all your grooming products, 20% off at Manscaped. Therapistpreferred.com, 25% off 5RSN, and Better Edge, that's our betting partner, peer-to-peer, legal, not offshore. Okay, you're basically betting against your friends. You can find the line you want. It's a great product, and we're running competitions. I'm the pacer this week for NFL, so if you beat me, you're going to win. Okay, that's how this works, and you will likely beat me. So go to Better Edge, use the code 5, that's number 5, RSN.
Hey, Becky, what about this beat for your next song?
It's cool, but I'm into faster stuff lately, like Xfinity.
Good, yeah. What does Spo do here? I mean, if they're all shooting poorly, you can't just bench a guy. They don't have any. He only played 8 the other night anyway, so it's not like he's going to. And by the way, Victor Oladipo and Yurt aren't helping this. So right. So this excuse that again we've allowed some Heat fans and at times we've used. Okay, they don't have their full rotation. I mean, Oladipo will likely make this worse. Okay, because that's not his strength. Okay. And Yurt's not, I know Yurt said that, he's making 80% of his threes in practice. I don't expect him to be bombing away from three either. So what do they do?
It's tough because you said about, benching a specific guy, but like you look at what we're talking about, like it's not one guy. Like there's not a sore thumb here where you're like, okay, he's hurting their percentages. It's more of a collective thing. And you brought up before about kind of what the deal is with wide open shots and why it's happening. For me, it feels like rhythm. Like we constantly talk about this team not having rhythm heading in because of the offseason and for other different reasons. And obviously defensively, you're not getting stops. And then you're coming the other direction. This team just doesn't have a lot of juice in general right now, where it's like they don't have that type of extra motivation, not to hit a shot, but like that extra juice in general to be able to be in that type of mindset. So it's, what do they do? I mean, the easy answer is you got to keep shooting. Like you got to keep getting the ball up because that is what this team needs to do. You can't get away from that. Like there's no way about it. When you're talking about a build around Jimmy and Bam, and obviously Tyler can create inside the arc, you need to make threes to win basketball games. You're talking about this team that's generally got a lot of threes up, which they're pretty much at the same number of attempts that they were last year. And I know to start the year, they were having trouble actually getting to that number, like the first 3 or 4 games. They've gotten the shots up, so the process has been there. They're just not hitting them. My other answer would be, which I know this is probably unrealistic when we talk about it, but play in transition a little bit more. Like we're not going to see it because we know where they're going to be at in the pace ranking. But like when your half court offense is just not there, like it doesn't hurt to play into transition a bit more. And I should have got some of the numbers because thinking at the top of my head, we've seen a lot of pull-up threes this year. Like in terms of just like running the fast break. I think of last night we saw a couple from or the night before we saw a couple from Kyle and Gabe. Tyler's actually been good from that this year. like get out in transition to try to create some numbers and some momentum of some kind instead of sitting still and getting these same looks over and over. It just feels like it gives them a little bit of diversity, I guess. But that's not going to fix their shooting numbers in general. Like when looking at the half court stuff, I was looking at some of the fourth quarter numbers because I feel like this stuff's important. The most threes attempted in the fourth quarter for Miami is Max, and at 31 threes, he's shooting 36%. You go down the next guy in line, Gabe Vincent, 15 threes attempted. He's shooting 33%, so he's going 5 for 15. And then I get to Kyle Lowry, and he's 2 of 15 in the fourth quarter this season.
Oh.
That's not helping anything. Like when you're talking about a guy that's trying to organize your offense, what we talked about, and then all of a sudden Tyler and Jimmy are taking over in the fourth quarter. He sides off ball. You got to hit those shots. And I don't want to have that discussion right now because he actually played well last game. Like his shooting in general looked good and all that. But when we take the 11 games we've seen and put them together, it's kind of a conclusion that you kind of have to come to. And then you have Duncan. He's 5 of 14, which is not bad for fourth quarter, shooting 36%. And then Tyler's 4 of 9 in the fourth quarter, 44%. So nothing's too crazy there other than Kyle's numbers. Like in general, like he's shooting 7 of 24 in general and 29% in fourth quarters. That doesn't help. So it's interesting because you want to tend and lean into the Jimmy Bam stuff. And I know it's funny because we're talking shooting, so we're like not talking Jimmy or Bam at all. But they actually lean into this a bit because just because they're not shooting threes doesn't mean they're not shooting. And I think Bam should get off the hook because he's looked good from the mid-range. Like when he's taking it, it's looked good. When you talk about Jimmy, on the other hand, like the other night, and I didn't want to put too much light on it, but like when you're talking about them being up 10 with 6 minutes left, and we saw a couple of those one-legged step-back jumpers inside the arc, it's like, it's the regular season again. Like it is what it is. You know what you're getting from Jimmy Butler. If it's the regular season or the playoffs, there's a switch that can go off. And I think Heat fans have to live with that. Like that is not something I'm going to harp on.
Yeah, but hold
much.
on. Hold on. I'm going to counter you on that. And I'm going to go to Greg on this. I don't think they can live with it anymore. And then this is why we're going to have a Jimmy episode here coming up, because I understand there's a switch. But if the switch comes when they're in the play-in, that's a problem. Like the switch has to go now. Okay, you're 4 and 7. It has to go now. Like because that frustrated the hell out of me too. I mean, the one, it's almost like he just tries stuff because okay, and he does, but then when they're down, he'll do the work. He'll get in the lane. He'll get the contact. Okay, he'll start to get himself into rhythm. Those shots, if you tracked those shots, okay, when he starts taking those with the lead, and then see what happens to the Heat after he starts to miss those. I'm telling you, every single time it leads to a run on the other side. Every time. Okay, I don't know if it's because the Heat collectively let down because their leader is not doing the things that they're accustomed to him doing, or the other team feels like there's an opening there. But there is. I don't know the metrics on it. Okay, this is eye test, but there seems to be a correlation between him doing that stuff and the team relaxing. It can't happen anymore now. Like because here's the other thing: we know Jimmy's going to take more games off. So they're going to have to play without him. So the games that he does play, I would rather he go full throttle for 65 games, okay, than play 75 and 20 of them are half-assed. Like they're not going to win that way because they lean on him, Greg. So I'd rather he not be on the floor if he's going to be doing that stuff because when he's on the floor, they count on him too much. And if he's doing that stuff, it goes the other way. One other thing before you jump in. We talk about the Lowry numbers, okay? I would like to see what Mario Chalmers used to shoot in the fourth quarter with those off-ball opportunities and not at $28 million a year. Okay. I just want Kyle Lowry to be Mario Chalmers in the fourth. Can we get that? Can we get that? Because that guy, I'm telling you, never shot 2 of 15 in the fourth quarter over any prolonged stretch. Okay. We can do eye tests or metrics for all the criticisms of Rio and all the rest of that stuff. When LeBron and Dwayne look to him at those, in those kind of situations, I bet you he made those shots at a 35 to 40% clip, okay? And not at $28 million. I'm sorry. Look, we're at that point. They're 4 and 7, okay? Their highest paid player. And you're right, Bam does get off the hook here. The other two guys, Kyle and Jimmy on this, do not.
And this is the other thing. Like, Jimmy is shooting more threes than he's shot since he was in Philly. Like, Philly and Minnesota, like 2018. So he's relying on that more than ever. Luckily, he's shooting 37.5%. Like, think about if he was also down in the 30s. But if you look at every release valve, we talk about Jimmy and Bam and an offense built around them. This is like about Max, who's shooting okay. Like it's all, I mean, I guess at 38%, if I'm just looking at it high level, that's fine. But when you have Gabe, Caleb, Kyle, and Duncan all just like literally, they're not threats at the moment. Gabe has had moments here or there, but overall he hasn't shot well. I just don't know that you can overcome that because like you can't have Jimmy be one of your highest percentage 3-point shooters. Like, what are we talking about here? And like functionally, because Dwayne Dedmon doesn't really count, he's essentially like their best 3-point shooter. And that's just not the way that this is going to work. So to me, I don't know what the answer is, but you're right. Like Kyle, there are moments where I feel like it would be incumbent on him, considering how much he was paid, to step up on offense and take over a little bit more. And we just haven't seen enough of it yet, but maybe it's turning around. Recently, he's looked better. I'm trying to give him credit because I'm frustrated.
I want to add in, when you were talking about Jimmy's percentage, he's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes to that point. Like, I think 5 of the ones he missed were like pull-ups, so it kind of declined that even more. But Ethan, I want to give you a counter to your counter because you brought up Jimmy, I guess, with the shots. The reason I feel like I think we're looking too much into it, and the reason that's why I say it, is I think there's recency bias in the last game. Because I think that's the 1 out of the 11 games we've seen it. So, like, I totally get it from that perspective, but, like, he hasn't even shot that many bad mid-range jumpers in general when I think about the first 10 games. So if it continues, I think it's problematic. But I just feel like in terms of all 11 games together, I guess we just haven't seen it enough to become problematic, especially late in the fourth. Because I feel like he's been decent for them late in the fourth. Like, he had the big shot against Golden State, and he had decent moments where he hasn't been out of character, I'll say. But once it gets to that point and he gets out of his game, it's just going to throw everything off.
No, I see that. But I think you can sense a tone change with me. We're at the point of the year where their top guys need to carry them out of the mud here. Okay. This is Shawshank Redemption. Okay. They're going through a river of bleep. They got to get to the other side. All right. Andy Dufresne, whatever it is you want to say. They need to do that now. Their core 4. Okay. Their core 4, the guys who got paid. Okay. Jimmy, Bam, Duncan, and excuse me. Well, Duncan's the 5th, but I'm not going there. Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, and Tyler. Okay. They need to lead. I mean, we can talk about the role players, and again, Max, Caleb, and Gabe with their numbers, cratering on the open shots. But again, we all agree, I think, right, that overall the 3 of them have been fine, right? The roles change, Max's role changed, Caleb's role changed. I think we all agree maybe Gabe should have a bigger role, whatever it is. But the 3 of them have not been the problem. I mean, at times this open shooting has been a problem, but I'm saying overall, the guys who are getting paid on this roster, the front end of this roster, if you're going to compete with the great teams in this league, those guys need to play at a high level. And you cannot have a guy, your starting point guard, shooting 2 for 15 from 3 in the fourth quarter. Okay. Because you can get Ish Smith to shoot 4 of 12. I mean, I'm just being serious. Like, right. Okay. And
Drew Smith.
Against the Heat, he would shoot 12 of 12. But even with Jimmy, okay, and it's not the 3-point shooting I'm talking about, but it's just you can't have what you had in the last game because it does go to all the other players here. I'm not dissatisfied with Jimmy's overall performance this year. I'm just saying they need to be better than they've been, like, to get them out of this. Like, you have like that. Look, when Pat when the Heat were having troubles during Riley's early years, he would turn to Zoe and Tim and say, "Get us out of this."
Yep.
Get us out of this. Okay. We're looking at you. Okay. Or Spo, would look during the big 3 era. Okay. Dwayne and LeBron and Chris, get us out of this. Okay. We're not looking to Shane Battier to shoot us out of this. You guys get us out of this. Those big 3 teams, they went through shooting slumps. Ray couldn't make a shot on the road for like an entire season. This is Ray Allen, one of the 5 greatest shooters in NBA history. Shane went through terrible slumps. Mike Miller would go through slumps when he then would get benched and then he would get hurt. Okay. But so look, those guys were more accomplished than the Heat's role guys. Okay. Those guys were top. I mean, you're talking about Shane Battier, Ray Allen. You're talking about guys who were elite college players who were top 10 picks. Okay. If you're counting on your former 2-ways to get you out of this with your shooting, okay, it's got to be the other way. Their quote unquote stars need to get them out of this. And I think then that will feed to the role players who will start shooting the ball better. I think they give the role players confidence. It can't be the other way around. Right.
The
now.
NBA champion needs to step up.
That's what it is to me.
And I just want to throw in the reason I think that the guys you're talking about deserve more emphasis here is because I'll tie this back to the thing I said earlier. They've gone from 5th to 25th in paint touches. That's important here. Like when you're talking about these guys need to get them through this, these guys need to force the looks. Like they have to be the guys that are getting inside the paint. Jimmy, if he's playing, needs to be getting inside the lane consistently to get these guys looks. Obviously, Bam needs to be inside the lane to get these guys looks. Tyler and Kyle are part of that core four that you mentioned, are two guys that can really generate paint touches when they're actually doing it. That's what needs to happen here because that's what gets the role players going.
But isn't that laziness? I mean, but doesn't that get back to one of the points we've talked about here, which is that this team doesn't seem engaged because it's easier, okay, for whether it's, and I'm not singling out one person here, but I'm just saying for all these guys, it's easier for Kyle and Tyler if they can't get the screen they need to get in the lane to just chuck something up or pound the hell out of the ball, okay? Or in Tyler's case, or in Kyle's case, to just give it up, right? Hot potato it, okay? It's easier to do that than it is to try to get into the lane and create for somebody else. And for all the discussion and it's easier for Jimmy to shoot a step back when they're up 10 instead of doing what he did to get them up 10, which is get in the paint and create opportunities for other people. And look, the Bam conversation, this is why I don't want to have it anymore. I don't want to have this conversation about Bam shooting threes. It is not his responsibility to shoot threes for this team to be effective. It's his responsibility to be a terror on defense and take advantage of mismatches on offense and create opportunities with again, his playmaking, but also getting, I know he's not a great post player. I understand that, but getting in the paint occasionally and force teams to react to him. The four of those guys need to do this. I'm even looking at these. I'm not going to pin this on Max, Gabe, and Caleb. I'm sorry. It's not their responsibility to dig them out of this. Greg, am I wrong before we close?
You know who's shooting the same 3-point percentage as Kyle Lowry? Russell Westbrook. I mean, like he's like a running joke on the internet with his 3-point shooting, and they're both shooting 35%. Like, what is happening right now? Look, it's not on those other guys.
No, it's not.
Yes,
it's on Victor when he comes back. That's not the role they're expecting from him whenever it is that he does return. He will help with the paint touches, you would hope. He will help with creation and the rim pressure and all the things that we talk about and possibly spraying the ball out to these shooters. But he needs to start with their core guys. This is gonna be a consistent theme for me. You cannot rely on former. I don't care how effective you've been at mining them, developing them, how well they've reacted to it. They're not the guys who are carrying the flag for your franchise right now.
All right, that was all the episode 5 on the floor that you guys can listen to here on the Fire Eaters YouTube channel almost every day. So we're ready for the game. Have a good night. Enjoy the game. Hopefully the Miami Heat wins. And remember, as soon as the game's over, we're going to be here for the post-game show. Enjoy this one. Hopefully the Miami Heat win and they get their 5th win of the year. And if not, we'll still be here with you going through the pain here on the Fire Reasons YouTube channel. Have a good night. Enjoy it. And we'll see you later.